All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome everybody to today's guest speaker for the All Things Leadership YouTube channel. I'm excited to have everybody today. My name is Dr. Horacio Maldonado, and today I have a guest, Mr. Cody Jones. Mr. Jones is a legal administrative specialist. Cody, welcome to the channel, and thank you for your time, sir.
Hey, thank you for letting me be here, man. Pleasure's all mine.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Cody, we're going to take some time and talk a little bit about culture. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership and the risks and everything. I know that me and you have been talking about this prior about when it comes to culture and understanding what culture really means to an organization, to an individual, to a team. And sometimes people think, well, culture just how everybody acts, reacts, but it's actually not that. I think it's more deeper once you start diving into it. So I'll ask a couple of questions. I would definitely love to hear your perspective on them and just see where your mind's at. Because in our previous discussions, we always have a very deep conversation about the human being, what they do, how they do it, that mindset. So I'm pretty excited, and so I'm just going to jump straight into it. So Cody, how can leaders create a culture where employees genuinely feel cared for, and how does that impact their engagement and performance? What do we think about that statement?
Man. So as cheesy as this is going to sound, right? The answer it's a two-part question, right?
Yeah,
But the answer can be found in the first part of that question, right? You said, how can leaders create a culture where employees genuinely feel cared for?
yeah,
Okay. Well, that's the answer, right? You got to make your employees feel genuinely cared for, right?
yeah,
You're a numbers guy. I like numbers too, right? So from 2020 to 2025, right? Depending on who you read, what you're kind of looking at, and everything else, right? Anywhere from 50 to about 55% of people are just at work to just collect a paycheck, right? Or they see their job as just at a job, right? Just over broke, right? Very Marshawn Lynch, mindset. I'm just here so I can pay my bills,
yeah,
right? Now another study, and of course there are a couple of others out there, but generally speaking, again, that 2020 to 2025 range, you're looking at anywhere from 70 to 80% of people who feel when they feel valued, when they feel cared about, when they feel like they are being, represented, taken care of, and everything else, right? Like they're more likely to stay, right? So, so if we do the math and we apply the math on that, right? We're looking at, one and two, five and 10, however you want to scale this up, right? Of people who do not care, right? Well, you start adding them in, you start, making them feel like they're a part of the team and everything else. Well, suddenly now you take that 75%, 70 to 80, I'll meet you at 75. You take that 75, apply it to that 50, and now you're at 12.5%, I think, which is 1 in 10,
yes,
right? So the math on how that affects the job place certainly does add up, right? So when you only have one out of 10 folks, who are just like, hey man, I'm just here so I can pay my bills, right? Versus, half of the squad going, hey, I'm just here so I can pay my bills. That makes a huge impact on everything else, right? You
yep,
know, so how do you do that, right? How do we make that happen, right? I think it's a two-way street, right? Like if you want people to care about what's going on, you have to care about your people, right? So I'll use a prime example, right? I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a card game out there called Magic the Gathering. Okay. And I apologize to the folks that may be watching this who have tried to explain this to me. I've tried to understand this game, guys. It's not, I'm not picking it up too well, right? But, there's a lot of people who play it, right? And just having a simple conversation about something that maybe as the leader are not maybe too fluent in, maybe not too whatever, right? But listening to these guys talk about, in my example, this card game, right? Suddenly they are, they're more apt, to be part of, the conversation. They're more apt to talk to you about, everything else. Cause like, hey, you just let me talk to you about this card game, for however many minutes, hours. I think cumulatively, I have hours of explanation in this game. But It's stuff like that, right? And then when you start talking to people about whatever their passions are, or whatever fuels them outside of the workplace, right? You start to also kind of get an understanding of where some of these hidden talents are lying, right? Again, with my Magic the Gathering example, everybody has a very different strategy about how they go about that, right? And so when you're doing a launch or you're trying to campaign something new or you're trying to develop a new, more efficient way of doing things, right? You know, you start to kind of pick up on these hidden talents of like, hey, this guy does this and he has to have this skill set, and this skill set. Let me go pick this brain real quick, right?
Mm,
And you'll suddenly start realizing, like, oh, okay, there are different ways to do this. Hey, let me take a little bit of this, let me take a little bit of that, right? And then when you start implementing those things, right, if you're in a situation where you can, right, suddenly the people feel more empowered because like, hey, I helped with this process. I helped out with this, right? And so because you took the time to genuinely care, right, and you take their inputs and you take everything else that they're giving you, using what you can from it, you start to cultivate, everything together, right? And that's how you grow that culture, right?
mm,
In the intro, you said, how people react and it's how people move. Yes, but it's also, how tight knit is everybody, right? Um, it's a little hard to define like a workplace culture sometimes, right? But if you look at all sports analogy, if you look at the Bills Mafia, okay, that is a culture, and they are down
yeah,
for that team, right? Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter, right? You show up in Buffalo on a Sunday, you're going to see a table on fire and someone flying through it,
yeah,
right? Because they're down, right? And that's the type of culture that you really want to kind of push to your team and try to make them feel like, hey, hey, I'm down for you, you're down for us. Let's go get whatever the goal is.
yeah. Definitely. You made a lot of good points. I like the whole Buffalo Bills mob because I worked for an organization that was back when I retired. I think it was like about 2016, and man, we're just like that. We were tight knit with like about 26 people. It's a nonprofit, and it was a you. We look forward to going to work, believe it or not. We're like, dude, I need to, I had a purpose in going to work. Because we helped a specific group of veterans, but the people around there were so helpful, genuine. I guess for me, the more genuinism of people, they're not like fake, right? So it really kind of sort of spoiled anything after that because it was all like just shitty, dude. It was just crap, at the very end. But let
Hmm.
me ask you this question because I wrote it down here, Sean, you were talking about. You're talking earlier about the 12.5 and that 1 out of 10 person, right? Do you believe
Hmm.
that that one person out of 10, say you got like about 80 people, so then we have 8 people. Do you think that person would influence the other 9 to be like, "Hey, screw it, bro. We're for a paycheck. I don't think people above us like us. Hell, I don't even like myself." But do you think that that influence affects the others, maybe?
Oh
Or
yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely, man. Toxicity will breed, right? It will breed, and it I'm not saying that one person is a bad person, right? Because sometimes you need someone that'll just come in, do the job, and that's it, right? Sometimes you need people like that, right? But like let's say you got like two or three people who have like something going on, or it's like, man, like I'm really struggling with this new process, or hey, I'm really this, that, or the other, right? Well, if you got that one person, right? Who's kind of in their ear going, yeah, no, dude, like this process is whack. This process sucks. Like I don't even know why we're doing this, right? It starts to kind of unravel a bit,
yeah,
uh, you know, the, what you're trying to build in the processes and everything else,
mhm,
right? You
yeah,
know, um,
definitely,
I don't have like a specific example to give you, but that's kind of my interpretation of that
yeah,
is
because
you've
it
had
makes
that.
sense. Because I've worked with personnel in my career where if life is not going the way they want to go, or they're having some, external issues, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to kind of sort of, well, I'm already at work. I'm having a bad day. Just, I think I'm gonna use the analogy of like if you're having a very difficult time at home with your current partner, and then you go home, you're not gonna be at 100%, and we have to be honest, right? You're like
Yeah.
at 50, so it doesn't gonna take much for you to trigger me or be like, yo, man, I don't want to humor with the people today. Culture is one of those things, Cody, that a lot of my clients, when they call me, like they don't want to hear it, right?
Hmm.
Like they don't want to hear that you need to spend more time, resources, and effort on the culture of your organization. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because I broke numbers down to this organization once about, you know how much it costs for you to onboard? You know how much it costs for you to get rid of somebody and then onboard them? Time is money. I know it's a kind of a generic standard word,
But
but
it is.
when I was talking to speakers, like, look, man, you- we have to be able to, as leaders, as a person that's in charge of people, right? You have to be able to say, what am I not doing? And if I was to assess myself, be like, am I giving 100%? Is the culture of this organization, is it purpose? Does it have a meaning? Are we applying it to our vision? And you'd be surprised the answers that I get, Cody, because it's normally like, well, nobody's really asked me, how's my day? My dog died. I know it's simple, as small as that, because I had a situation that way. And they're like, well, it's just your dog. But that's the culture, dude, right? It's all about go, 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 numbers, numbers, numbers. We have to meet this deadline. And unfortunately, if it involves your feelings or your dog died or you're having mechanical problems or you're having, children it doesn't matter. And I think the culture shift for leaders to be more attentive, I believe, from my experience and a lot of people that I talk to is you have to be able to be genuine, man, because they'll spot when somebody's being fake,
Hmm.
right? And you cannot build a culture on fake. They'll spot you, be like, okay, whatever, dude. If he doesn't care, I'm not gonna care. So that means my production, my my attitude is gonna, I go back to that movie, The Office, not The Office, where the guys were all mad with the guy with the spreadsheets, an older movie. I forget the name of the movie.
Oh, uh, it's right there too. That would be great.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We should,
it's there. I don't remember the name of it.
yeah. Well, there's a situation on that. I just saw it recently, which is ideally for our conversation, Cody. The when they were interviewing everybody's like, it's not that the job is hard. It's just that I don't care. And the guy was like, well, tell us why. It's like I have eight bosses, which means I have eight different kind of ass chewings, and I have eight different type of way to do things. I have eight different planetary, universes. It goes, so who am I supposed to listen to? Myself? Because apparently what I'm doing is correct, but and it's the same thing, but kind of for the culture. I ran some numbers on culture the other day, and 5 out of 10, almost half, which is shockingly, on a study that was done, that leadership is not very well equipped to talk about culture,
Hmm.
the organization. And that's kind of shocking, Cody, to be honest with you. I mean, I know that it depends on different industries, but at the end of the day, and you nailed it, man. And you nailed it. You have to care for your people. Because if you do not care, then why are they there, dude? Right? And
Exactly.
it's you cannot expect people to do great for you if they're not feel they're being appreciated, they're being valued, or they're part of a solution. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, no, I get it, man. I appreciate your answer on that one, boss man. So
Yeah.
ask you this. In what situations my prioritizing process over people can be justified? And how can leaders balance these competing needs effectively? When I wrote this question, Cody, just to give a little bit of context on it,
Yeah.
the people that I train and the people that I've interacted with, when it comes down to justifying what they're doing for their organizations, the answers are not, I mean, I'll say it, like realistic.
Hmm.
It's like they're they justify it by saying, "Oh, look at our numbers, man. Last year we were 6%, now we're at 80%. You know,
Hmm.
our margins, our spreadsheets." It's like, dude, let's put that aside, man. Are,
Yeah.
and I said, are you people, is the team growing? Are you professionally and personally developing your team? So, just based on that question, what do you think, or how do you think effectively a leader can justify a culture where, they're meeting all needs? So I hope it makes understand. I hope I'm answering adding to that question effectively for you.
No, no, it does. It does, right? And I actually I had to think about this question quite a bit, right? Kind of leading up to this, right? Because my knee-jerk reaction, right, is obviously I'm very culture forward. I'm very culture first, right? You worry about your people, people are going to worry about everything else, right? But I had to sit back and I had to think about kind of what situations, might need that. And I'm still on that same reaction of there's no situation that you should be prioritizing the process over your people, right? And to explain that, right? There's a lot of jargon out there about what a leader is, right? We're specifically speaking about leadership now, right? Um, Leadership versus management. And what I've kind of boiled everything down to, right, is just a very simple thing, right? Leadership deals in people, management deals in processes, right? So, you may have some great management, right? That, look at those numbers, who obsess over the numbers, who are trying to maximize those numbers every step of the way, right? And to a manager, like cool beans, right? Like that's what you do. That's awesome, right? You do need some managers,
Yeah.
right? And for me to sit here and say, oh, it's all about the culture. No, but culture is a very big piece that is oftentimes neglected in all this,
Mm.
right? So if we change that wording up, right, instead of how can managers balance the competing needs effectively and implement more of a leadership role into their stuff. Um, we talked about, caring for the individual and everything else, right? And then you had kind of talked, for a minute there about how, if the person's not cared about, why are they going to care about the process, right?
Yeah.
And something that the manager can do is, if, show that same, show that same passion about the process as this person is and try to like, hey, look, all right, this is why we're doing this, right? When I'm training and I'm doing my stuff, I deal with a lot of paperwork, right? Which is it's very, very cold, very black and white, right? It's hard to be passionate about paperwork sometimes, right? Just straight up, right? However, though, it is important to ensure that that paperwork is filled out correctly, right? So if you mix a box, right, and it's like, okay, no big deal, right? The average person is going to go, no big deal, right? But if you have your people really like, look, this is why this box is important, right? In my particular role, if we miss a box or, we don't fill something out correctly, the benefits that that person has applied for may get delayed or even denied because it wasn't filled out correctly, right? So to put on the manager hat, do your people know the effects of what they're doing and how their role and how their role fits into the process? And are you making sure that they are, that you've poured into them enough to where now they want to pour back into that process, back into that role and everything else, right? That's how I think that you can kind of balance, the manager hat and the leadership hat more effectively is really, being genuine with your people, right? You can tell people like, hey, look, like
Yeah.
paperwork's not fun, right? Paperwork is paperwork, right? I can't think of anybody who just wakes up and goes, "Oh man, paperwork, let's go," right?
Yeah.
But to understand the importance of what that paper is and what that does and what it allows for
Yeah.
is certainly like, okay, cool. Now I have a purpose and now I understand what my role is
Mhm.
in this whole organization.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, the process of a people, it's there was a study that was done earlier this year that 3 out of 5, and I wrote it on here, 3 out of 5 managers have admitted to have admitted not to be adequately trained for that manager position. 3 out of 5. That's kind of scary because what does that tell me that they were just thrown in a position because hey, I know somebody, not to throw the word nepotism out there, but
Yeah.
you know, the in the past 5 years under the professional development for management studies, okay, that and because I want to make sure, and I'm like you, I love numbers because numbers don't lie, right? There
Mhm.
has been a steady increase in less professional development, which of course is a big. umbrella. It has a lot of different trainings, but at the end of the day, if I am the leader and you are my manager, one of the biggest things that I would need to do is I need to make sure that this person can fill my shoes in the event that I gotta go, right?
Mhm.
And the standard statement that I hear a lot, Cody, and is, well, if I'm a good manager, dude, I'm a great leader. And the answer is no, big guy. And I hate to disappoint you, and I would hate to think that you're not living your role or your life based on the like, dude, I'm a great manager. Of course I can lead people, right? But apparently, if they, that we have to be realistic, if you were, you wouldn't be a manager,
Mm-mm.
right? So, do you believe that managers, from your experience and from from your where you're at, do you believe that managers today have a bigger challenge to fill? Because like, look, leaders manages the overall, and the people, and the managers manage the people. What's not being done from your perspective, and that managers need to start doing to be more effective?
Well, there's there there's a lot that goes into that question, right? Um, you know, we're as we're talking about workplace culture, right? We also have to understand that the culture in general is changing, right? We have, and not to make it about age or anything else like that, right? But we have millennials who are still trying to get into their manager positions, right? You have Gen Z that's coming up behind us, right? And they're trying to find their footing in the world, right? And it's certainly a culture change from respectfully speaking, of course, always between our baby boomer population and our Gen X guys, right, who were raised different than what, say, millennials and Gen Z are, right? There's a different value in what's going on, right? There's a different value on why you are getting into that position, that role, and everything else, right? You know, um, so. I feel that with I feel like one of the main challenges is just understanding culture in general,
Hmm.
right? What that looks like from this side or the other. And you've said it several times, just because you're a good manager doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good leader, right? So what can they do is really kind of look at themselves like introspectively and, like, hey, would I enjoy working for me?
Hmm.
Right? Do I talk to my people the way that I would like to be talked to? You know, kind of the golden rule there that seems to have been lost to time sometimes. But just ultimately, just following the golden rule is solve probably. I mean, I can't put a percentage on it, but it probably solve a lot of your
A
problems.
lot of problems, yeah.
In the managerial portion of it, because it's like, look, like, yeah, you may be really great about turning profits, and keeping everybody green and yada, 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 right? But if you have high turnover, right? Because like you said in the beginning of all this, right? Turnover is expensive, right? Right. Even something as just like say, just like the fast food industry, right? You know, um, you gotta, a lot of places will pay for the food handler's license, right? That way, they don't get bopped on that, right?
Hmm.
The onboard training, the man hours that you're paying for not actually doing the job, but working, or sorry, not working, but just sitting there in a training situation all day, right? The uniforms, depending on, this, that, and the other, right? So there's a lot of costs in there where you could just sit there and be like, okay, am I treating, my line staff like I would want to be treated? Right.
Exactly.
Am I approaching them with the same type of respect and everything else? Right. Because yeah, you may be green, yeah, we're getting record sales and all this and that, right? But you're throwing it all away in turnover, right? And again, to go back to the study that I kind of illustrated in the first half, right? You can have 50% of your workforce, just like, yeah, whatever, if I lose this job, I'll just go get another one, whatever. Or you can have just that one person that you're just like, hey, you can work on one person, right? Working on half your staff
Hmm.
is 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 crazy,
Yeah.
right?
No, and it's such a reminds me when I was in I used to be a general manager for Whataburger back in the day, man, when I was stationed in South Texas, and I had a team of like I think like 12 people, and they were
Okay.
younger kids, man, all thugs, man, love it, man, best employees ever, right?
Hmm.
So one of the things the company used to tell was like, hey, we're gonna do training. And I love that the investment in our development, and they would pay you for that extra day to come in. It was the weekend, they come in on Saturday from like 8 to 1. They paid you for that day for the full day. You
Hmm.
did some great training, man. And I'm hearing it less and less that that's going away. I spoke with a comptroller from the state of Texas a couple of months ago. And he's saying that the average organization in the state of Texas with an employees between 80 to above, maybe like 400, their
Hmm.
onboarding cost to retrain someone is a little bit over 18,000. I'm like, that's crazy, dude, right?
That's insane.
But okay, so based on that number, why not use that money and invest in your current team, right? Because, hey, I'm just gonna lay it out here, you know how it is, and I talk to a lot of people when it comes to us, like, well, I tell them the days of me saying because I said so, or because the name on that door, or because whatever, the parking spot, those days are over, man.
They're gone.
Those days are completely over. And I, I'm a big fan of mindset. I'm always talking about mindset and a lot of things that I do because it truly is, you know. If you don't
Hmm.
have that culture centered mindset already, I think you're behind the curve. I think you're just gonna lead off emotion. You're gonna lead off of however I'm feeling that day because I've seen it. I saw it in the military, and then I saw it in the private sector,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Cody, just to let you know, we're doing a part two to this discussion. I'm gonna ask you this last statement because I want to respect your time and I want to do our time, but we're gonna come back and do round two, brother. Just let you know. So
Awesome.
let me ask you this: how can leaders shift their mindset to value empathy and connection when involving culture?
Let's see here. Yeah. It's it it can be a little hard to get empathetic on stuff, right? Because as we kind of said before, or like you just said, it's really hard to kind of dial back, what you're feeling that day, or kind of having life and job kind of blur together in the workplace, right? It's really, really hard to do that, right? You know. Um, but it takes that second to, like, okay, let me step back a second, right? And you have to really, you got to hone that skill of being able to step back, right, and understand kind of the micro and macro of what's going on,
Yeah.
right? Um, I make it sound really easy, right? And it's hard,
Yeah,
right? And
it
it
is.
takes practice,
Yeah,
right? And that's the thing. I feel like as we're talking about, like personal development going away and everything else kind of going away, right? Like that's kind of some of the issues that we're having, right? Is because our folks are not being professionally developed, right? Now, you and I have had, the luxury of, having leadership courses, either through the military or through different positions that we've worked at. We've had the opportunities to kind of get into it, right? Um, Now there's a lot of people that just won't, right?
yeah.
Now, there are some really, really good resources out there that will kind of help out with that, right? I wish I had written this down.
Hmm.
It's there's a book, um, How to Influence People and Make Friends by Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
I think that's his name. Okay. If you are looking for a way to kind of uh, better work with people and kind of expand on that professional development and everything else, that book was written, I want to say like late 30s, early 40s, right? The original version of it, which is the one that I would recommend. Like the new versions, good, but the first version has a lot of extra tidbits in there that may help some stuff click, right? But I would certainly start there as far as trying to work on creating empathy and how to kind of be able to take that step back and really work on that professional development and work on the empathy, to kind of pass along to your people. That way you can, because again, you treat your people good, they're going to make sure the process is done right, right? And as I said before, that's not the entire picture of it, but that is certainly a darn good spot to start.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes one of the most neglected, as we've kind of illustrated through this entire conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times people that are in the position of influencing others, they might just use the whole, well, I understand what's going on, but right now we have to do this. So not that I guess prioritizing your people's needs, not
Mhm.
above everything, but if you just spend some time on prioritizing what's going on, I'm going to guarantee you that the more attention you pay to them, he or she is going to be like, you know what, this person really cares
Mhm.
in what I'm doing. It values, it validates my role. It validates who I am as an individual. Dude, guarantee it, man. They're gonna go far and beyond. They're gonna do the whole military like up exemplary, performance, in the line of duty. Um, why couldn't we use the same, mindset and bring it to the private sector? But that's for another call. We're gonna have a second round of discussions, Mr. Cody. I just let you know right now.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I appreciate Mr. Cody Jones, Mr. Cody, Mr. Cody, Mr. Cody. I really appreciate your time, sir. We value your information. We value what you said, which is fantastic for our channel. We just really appreciate your time today, Cody.
I appreciate you having me on, Dr. Maldonado, man. It's always an honor and a pleasure when we get together, and I'm happy to look forward to that part too, sir.
Gotcha, gotcha. We're definitely going to say, well, folks, thank you very much for joining us today in All Things Leadership. We're going to have a round two with Mr. Cody. Hey, if you enjoy this content, make sure you subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see next. But hey, everybody have a great day.